Welcome everyone to MD Expo. Welcome to my presentation and thank you for attending. It's good to have you here. I was looking around the room before when everybody was kind of filling in. I thought there's going to be a lot of young people in this group, but not as much as what I thought. But older people like me, I'm an older person presenting on this, and this is all new to me. And you'll kind of hear my story kind of towards the end, how I got involved with wearable technology like this watch that I wear. And it's been quite a journey and very eye-opening for me. So I wanted to share my experiences with you and kind of tell you what I think maybe is the future of healthcare technology. So wearable technology is the presentation. You probably already knew that. What is wearable technology? Technology that is designed to be used while worn. Well, you think of like the watch or rings. There's also glasses. There's implantable medical devices. There's even tattoos now. There's clothes that you can wear, which I'll talk about. Doing my research, getting ready for this presentation, I kind of opened a rabbit hole and I just kind of like kept diving down. I'm like, man, there's so much to this. And it seems like it's expanding so fast that it's going to change the way that we do medical equipment in the future, I think. So wearable medical devices, they have transmit electronically. So this started way back in like 1970s. They had wearable stuff, but someone would have to wear a backpack with a computer on the backpack. Now, guess what? I have my phone here. It has more computing power than a 1970s computer by a long ways. So it takes the place of that. Can allow in some cases for immediate biofeedback to the user, which you'll see my case at the end where, yeah, I got some immediate feedback and it wasn't good. So what is wearable technology? I wanted to kind of break it down by the way that FDA classifies equipment. So the first type of equipment is non-FDA approved equipment, and it's most wearable over-the-counter technology or smart devices like the watch, the ring, all that kind of stuff, things that we'll be talking about later, kind of fall into this. All the wearable technology, like these ones, the mainstream ones that we can buy over the counter, they kind of started out as fitness trackers more than they did as being real medical equipment. And I don't know if, I guess I can consider it real medical equipment, and you'll see why at the end. But then there's the FDA approved stuff they classify it class 1, 2, and 3. Class 1 is like the lowest risk equipment, such thing as a stethoscope. And then class 2, if used incorrectly, pose a risk to the operator and patient. An example of that is just an ECG machine, like the roll around ones, or just a patient monitor. And then class 3 can harm patients and users if they fail to be used incorrectly. If they fail or are used incorrectly, sorry, such as a defib, ventilators, like that kind of thing. So for my presentation, I'm going to be focusing just on the type, like this type up here, that's not really classified. That's what this is going to be about. I'm going to talk about some classified equipment a little bit. Some medical devices fall into this category, such as a Holter monitor, insulin pump. These are usually devices that are prescribed. So I've actually been prescribed a Holter monitor myself before, and wore it for about a month. And I actually had a phone that went with it that would transmit the data to a data center, and they were looking at my heart rhythms all the time, and it alerted them. And I actually was pumping gas in my car, and the phone rang, my personal phone. I don't know who that is. I'm not answering it. I'm pumping gas. You're not supposed to do that at a gas station. They left a message. I guess I'll check it. This is the monitoring company that this and that for your Holter monitor. Can you give us a call as soon as possible? Oh my gosh, what the heck? You know, I better call them back. So I called them back, and it was kind of like a guessing game back and forth. How are you feeling? And how are you doing now? You know, like at this time, how are you feeling? You know, and I'm like, I don't know. It was actually, I do this boot camp workout, and it was on a Saturday morning. And I had just gotten done the boot camp workout. And when I was getting towards the end, we had to do like a stationary bike, and it was like me and another guy trading off, each one of us doing like so much on the stationary bike and then going back. And I went into AFib when I was doing the stationary bike. I didn't know that. I just thought, man, I'm really tired. And I'm like, I was just trying to make it through this riding this bike. And like, oh, I'm just done with this workout, you know, and went home, pumped gas in my car, and that's when my phone rang. But they didn't tell me I had AFib. They said, how are you feeling? I found out later from the doctor that if you have AFib and you're asymptomatic, they call it, you don't have any symptoms that present to you, they don't really do anything for you. They just go, keep on going with your life. So I see some people nodding their heads. Maybe you've had something like this. You'll hear my story a little more at the end. I don't want to take too much time up of it. But history of medical devices, of wearable medical devices. So you don't think of some of these as medical devices maybe, but they really are. Hearing aids, eyeglasses, wearable wristwatch, we don't really, I mean, back in 1900s, it probably wasn't a medical device, but it was something that started to be later on medical device. Pacemakers weren't around until the 1930s. So you think of like how much we've progressed in just 100 years, and then we'll look at how much we've progressed in 50 years in just a minute. Holter monitor was originally called radio telemetry, and it's from the 1940s. In the 1970s, we started having temperature detection on watches. I remember I thought I was really cool because I used to have this watch that I could take my temperature and I could tell you what the temperature was outside. And I was one of the coolest people ever, you know, in my opinion. Calculators, calculator watches in the 1970s. I don't know if you remember, some of you are older like me, you remember back the people had those calculators on their watch. I have some pictures in a minute, but that, like, whoa, that was even cooler than taking your own temperature with your watch, having a calculator on your watch. So then in the 2000s, we started really, have you ever looked at like the progression curve of technology, how it kind of curves up like this, and it just keeps building, like a snowball rolling downhill kind of. The more you invent, the more you can invent, it kind of opens up more avenues. So that's kind of like what I kind of see happening right now is what's going on with all this wearable technology. So wearable cameras on watches in the 2000s, Bluetooth communication, which I put as a key development. I thought that was really important with having Bluetooth, and we'll see why, because I mean, you already know it kind of makes sense. You have this wearable thing that talks to your phone, and then your phone has more computing power than whatever wearable, the little ring that you're wearing or whatever. Fitbit tracker, 2010. So it just started as exercise, you know, like tracking your movement, how much you walk during the day. Like now, before, you know, like before 2010, if someone asks you, how many steps do you have in the day? I don't know, I walk around a lot at work. I don't know how far I go, maybe a mile or two, or, you know, I have no idea, you know, like, well, from the parking garage to where I work at is, you know, a quarter mile. From there back, you know, I do that twice a day, and then, you know, like I walk around from this part to that part, and there's, at my hospital where I work at, there's one part that I go to from my shop. It takes me 10 minutes one way to walk there. It's a long ways away. It's at one end of the building to the other end of the building, and our building's really long, and they're actually adding on to it. It's getting longer. So 10 minutes to walk from one place to the other place. So I'm like, I think I walk a lot of steps, but I couldn't tell you how many. Now I just look at my watch and go, oh, I walked this many steps today, and I've been standing this many hours, and I've done this much exercise in one day. It's kind of cool. So that's where the wearable thing kind of started, was the Fitbit. 2013 near field communication ring, or NFC ring. Does anybody know what near field communication is? I see, like, you have, anybody staying at the hotel? Yeah, when you go to open your door, you run that along there, or you have a credit card that you just swipe it over the payment thing. That's near field communication. And we have this ring, that's how it works, is near field communication. And called a smart ring now, like the smart watch, so on. Samsung Galaxy Watch 2015, or 2013, and then the Apple Watch was shortly after that. And the Apple Watch has gone through several versions. Some with the Samsung Galaxy Watch has gone through different versions. Here's some pictures. This is the NFC ring up here. Here, this is a hearing aid. Everybody knows that one. These are the cool calculator watch. I had to put those pictures in there. This is a Apple Watch, of course. And these rings on here are trackers. The blue one is how long you've been, how many hours standing. The green one is how much exercise you've done. That's like when your heart rate's elevated. And then the red is your steps for the day, and of course what time it is. And these are the sensors on these Apple Watches. And you can see they've kind of, like here there's only 4 dots, and here there's like more dots, and here there's a whole bunch of dots. And if you have an Apple Watch, you can look at the back of it, and you can see there's like a green light and there's a red light in there, and it does different calculations, different stuff. So I wanted to talk a little bit about infusion pumps and artificial pancreas. So this is an artificial pancreas from 1974. This is an insulin pump, and this is a patient. I got this picture off the web. This is the first insulin pump. FDA approved, 60 kg. What is 2.2 times 60?
It's 132.
132 pounds. There's my calculator in my watch. It's that easy now. I don't have to hit those little buttons like I had back then. 132 pounds, this big thing. Pretty big, 1974. $50,000 a month to rent it. So they used it mostly for patients in the hospital. They were hospitalized after surgery to recover from surgery and stabilize their blood sugar so they could recover faster and be within range. Because we know, I don't know if you know anyone that has diabetes. My wife has diabetes, and we'll see some sensors in a minute, but it can really complicate a lot of things. So it's good to keep it stabilized. Used for type 1 diabetes. This big machine, this big honker. Guess what? Look at this today. This is the insulin. This is the glucometer right here. This piece tells the blood sugar, how much has been delivered. This is actually the pump. This piece, this is the newest one out on the market. It has no tubing anymore. There used to be tubing like this one that we see over here. This one is the pump, and that's the sensor over here. That's the glucometer, and that's the sensor. So this is a closed loop system. It measures the patient's glucose levels all the time, and it can automatically adjust, or it can suggest to the patient, hey, your blood sugar is going high. There's high and low alarms, and you need to take a bolus. It's getting too high, or oh, you need to eat some sugar because it's getting too low. Too low is probably more of a problem because people can pass out when it gets really low. And I've had my wife get really, I thought she was drunk or something, and like what's wrong with you? It's like, and it was like slurring her words and everything. Oh my gosh, you've been drinking, or because I was like downstairs and she was upstairs. My blood sugar, and I looked on the table and she had like her sugar candies. She eats these gummy candies to raise her blood sugar. And I saw the gummy candies there, and I could kind of understand that she said her blood sugar was too low. And I said, well, how much is it? And it was like around 30, which 30 is really, really low. Normal is around 80 or so to, like, they say as high as 200, but she was trying to correct it. And we ended up actually going to the hospital, and she got IV glucose, and they changed her, they checked her for a stroke and all this different stuff, and had the sticking out her tongue and smiling and all. If you've ever seen the stroke protocol in the hospital on a TV monitor, like they called the neurologist like late at night when this happened. And yeah, so this infusion pump, or artificial pancreas, if you want to call it that, it started in the 2000s. So I have got a wearable glucometer like this piece here or this piece here. There's an app for the glucometer and an app for the pump, all on your phone. So it reads Bluetooth to your phone. It's better, it has better A1C. Who knows does anyone know what A1C is? A1C? Yeah? I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you want to answer, or do you want me to just say, what is? Over time, right? Yeah, over a period of time. So you can have a good blood sugar right now. They can go, oh, you're within normal range. But let's look at your A1C and see, it gives you a time period, like, are you in that normal level? And you'll see a graph in just a minute. Are you in that normal level for a long time, or do you have big ups and downs, or whatever it is? So it can tell you your A1C. And normally with diabetics, they want your A1C to be below 7 is the magic number. You're below 7, that's good. Above 7, we got some issues. With this new insulin pump, most people that have diabetes that were doing shots or doing like their own injections before, now that it has closed loop, most of them see like a 1-point reduction in A1C, which is really good. So it reports and it alerts, and this is used in type 1 diabetes, the same as this one. So 132 pounds, a few ounces maybe at the most, 50 years later. Not even 50 years. Tomorrow, next year is 50 years for this. So you see that progression curve that I was talking about. This is all data from the insulin pump. Blood sugar, this is like levels over time. It can even predict A1C. It can tell you what your A1C level is. This is a graph, and these are kind of the boundaries of where it should be. Some of these are actually pictures off my wife's display that I took. That's why they look kind of, these two I think are definitely, and that one too. But yeah, it's kind of like where you're normal, if you're in the normal range there. And then it has those alarms that tells the patient, hey, you're out of range. This is a classified device from the FDA. You can't just buy it over the counter. You have to have a prescription from a doctor. But it's made a huge difference in people's lives. And you see from 1974 to 2023 where we're at. So what are the vital signs that we monitor on most monitors in the hospital? I looked up, I could find a lot of different, there's like a pretty big range of vital signs, and it depends on who you talk to, I think. But the 5 most common that I saw were core temperature, heart rate, respiratory rate, blood oxygen, and blood pressure. Those are kind of the big 5, I would call them, are in vital signs. So let's look at NFC rings, near field communication. And see, this one's a better picture. You see all these doodads underneath here, all this fancy stuff. Those are all transmitters and receivers on this ring. And it can do heart rate, it can do blood oxygen, it can do respiration, it can do blood pressure, body temperature tracking, steps tracking, which we talked about. That's where they originated out, was just tracking steps and how much you move around. It can track your sleep, and it can track heart rate variability. Heart rate variability, I see Rick's got one on, awesome. What kind do you have, Rick? That's the one I did the most research on, is the Oura ring. It's spelled O-U-R-A. Do you pay for the subscription service for it? No, you just have it read to your phone. So you can actually get it monitored through the subscription service, what, $7 a month or something like that? So we'll see in a minute why I think these things are so good. Heart rate variability though, does anybody know what that is? I'll talk about it later, but for now I'll let you think about it. Smartwatch. This is I can't remember the name of this one. It started with the V, I don't remember. Step counter, heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, calorie counter, pulse oximeter or blood oxygen, that's what most of them call it, like, is blood oxygen. You'll see a picture later on that has blood oxygen on it. Temperature, ECG. So this one can do heart rate variability too, but it also has the addition of being able to do an ECG. So on my smartwatch, I can go to the ECG on there, and I can, one lead is on the bottom of my arm here, and the other lead is my right arm that I put on this little sensor here. So it's going lead 1, across right arm to left arm. Same as like a monitor in the hospital. So it's able to do ECG, and you might have seen on TV that Cardia Mobile. If you've ever seen that ad on TV, or maybe you know someone that has one, and they put like one finger on each side, and that gives a reading. That's also an ECG. Fall detection. So one thing that with this step counter, this works on accelerometers. So when you're moving, it's accelerometers. The accelerometer can also sense when you fall. When you fall, you can turn on the detection to say, you know, like, do you want to notify anyone or not? You know, if you fall, I mountain bike, and I've fallen quite a few times. Just, it happens. It's part of riding. I turn off my fall detection. I don't want them notifying someone every time I fall. I don't fall that much, but I do have a few wrecks from time to time. It's funny because I joke with my wife. I have these like pads that I wear for my knees, and because I've bumped my knees a few times. And it seems like whenever I decide I don't need those today, it's just going to be an easy wreck. That's the day I wreck. So I wear those all the time now. And I haven't really had any wrecks in quite a while. But connectivity to a phone, or I put a home base. Home base is your phone, or like my wife, that Dexcom that she has, it doesn't work with iOS. So she has another phone that's, I guess, an Android phone that she carries around, and all it does is her Dexcom pump, that G6 pump that we looked at a minute ago. So some of the technology is not quite up to speed, like user across all devices yet, but that computer that used to be in the backpack is now pretty much does everyone in here have a phone in their pocket or a phone somewhere they carry with them? Yeah, it's pretty much a common thing now. And me growing up in the 80s as a kid, I could have never imagined that we would have all the stuff that we have now. And I went to a display at the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan, in Detroit, and they had a whole display case there of all the stuff that from the 1980s that your phone can do now, like your alarm clock, your music, your Walkman that you used to have. It had calendar, like so on, everything that's on your phone, all the apps that you can add. Because I used to use a Level at my work, and I had a Level on there, and it had all that as an app that you can do now. So it's pretty incredible. But everybody has a computer now that they carry around with them. It's called a smartphone. Is it comparable to hospital equipment? What do you think? Anybody have an opinion, or like what? I mean, of course one's FDA approved and one's not, right? So one's just a type, like a fitness tracker, I would say, and the other one has gone through like 510K process to become. What do you think back there? Nice. So it's a wearable piece, or you just put it on when you need it? Just like a couple times a day or whatever? Yeah, my wife has one. The doctor wanted her to track. It goes around her wrist, and it's just an over-the-counter. She didn't. It's not. I don't think it's FDA approved, and it does. It's not smart. It just does. She writes it down on a piece of paper. It's tracking my blood pressure. Here it is. The one that you have, is it smart? So it actually reports to somewhere. It goes to your phone or something. Garmin. Oh, okay. Yeah. Garmin's big into fitness trackers. I told you I mountain bike. Garmin has like trail maps and all this stuff, like tracker that goes on your bike. Some of my friends use that. There's other ones too that do the same thing. Have any of you done any comparing or thought about it? Like comparing your smart device to whatever you had at work, like a monitor or something at work that you did? Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So who makes that one? Garmin? Medtronic. Sorry, you were Garmin back there. Medtronic. So that's an actual medical device then. Then it's loaned to the patient, and then they give it back after a certain period? Okay. So almost sounds like a telemonitor almost. When they're at home, how does it read? Does it read back to the hospital? Goes to the web, and then from the web to the hospital? Yeah, that's one of my things I'll get to later about some of the things like future things. Does anybody else, do you have anything in your hospitals or anything like that, wearable, or thought about comparing it, like your device to like a device in the floor or something? I tried to hook up my ECG sim, my sim stick. I tried to hook the lead onto the back and put one on the little piece because I thought that'd be cool to have like for my presentation, but I could never get it to quite run. I'll figure it out. I'll figure out a way to do it, but I haven't got it to do it yet. You'll see in a minute like some comparing that I did. Do you know of any interaction with hospital equipment? I think you already said like it kind of interacts, just the record goes to the doctors or whoever's monitoring it. Do you have any that actually imports into equipment? Has anybody heard of any of that? No, I haven't either. I just thought, well, since I got everybody here, I'll try to learn too from you, but I don't have all the answers either. So I haven't seen this, but it'd be cool if it did. So that's my hairy arm there. And this says 97% blood oxygen. And it says measurement taken in a high elevation environment. It's kind of blurry on my picture. I live in Denver, Colorado, so it's 5,000, a little over 5,000 feet. So this is a Philips monitor, 96%. I have a finger probe. I have a probe on my finger there, and I was comparing it to my watch. And my watch read 97, the monitor read 96. So from that one test, which is not very scientifically conclusive or probably not good enough to get an FDA 510 clearance, it seems pretty accurate. But the ECGs that I've taken on my watch, some of them are just crazy, like too much noise and too much, like the baseline's wandering, and it's not, you know, like, and if my heart rate's real high, sometimes doesn't read real well. But this one, and this one also, this blood oxygen on my watch, and I don't know, does anybody else have this? Does anybody else check their blood oxygen or look at that? Hands, yeah. I have a hard time getting a reading on mine. I have to like tighten down the band and kind of be real still and real stable. It also, I didn't know this until I started looking into stuff. It tracks my pulse or blood oxygen even at night while I'm sleeping. So we'll get into the sleeping part in just a few, but it's pretty interesting. So what I think that these wearable devices do is they possibly can create a healthier patient population. I'm a good example of a bad example of myself. So I'll tell you a little about what mine is towards the end. Patients with chronic diseases, wearable devices may reduce the number of hospitalizations. So if you know with like that insulin pump thing, if you know you're in range or not in range, that can, if your blood sugars are out of whack, you know, like really crazy, you could be hospitalized, and it can lead to bigger problems along the way. And having that A1C in control, that eliminates or less likelihood of more internal organ damage to a patient. When your blood sugars are, you know, 7 or much higher, some people are in double digits blood sugar, like 10 and above. It can create a lot of problems internally. Not that these wearable devices do that, but there actually is wearable devices that are being developed now that analyze your sweat, and they can tell your blood glucose off your sweat levels, which is kind of cool. I mean, this stuff, this wearable technology is going to change the way that we do medical equipment in the hospital too, I think. So patients can adjust their routines and diets according to the display on their wearable device. Just saying like, oh, I need to do like 10 more minutes of walking or exercise, or and my watch, it kind of pisses me off sometimes because it'll tell me at the end of the day, Dave, you need to do, or it'll say, you only need 10 more minutes of walking or exercise for the day, and you'll be good for the day. And I'm like, shut up, you know, I don't care. I'm done with that. I'm done for the day. But yeah, if you really are into that, you can, oh, okay, I'm going to go and walk around the block or whatever, 10 more minutes and get your exercise for the day and then close my green ring. It's kind of, it helps you maybe get moving or motivates you more than what you would normally have if you didn't have something like this. So this can save expensive treatment costs or hospitalization, some of this monitoring, because you're going to know beforehand, before it becomes a problem, it'll be known. And I'll talk more about this later. So I said it's monitoring your sleep, the blood oxygen. It looks at heart rate variability. So I asked earlier, what's heart rate variability? Does anybody know what that is? It's the spacing between the R waves. So when you have a normal heart rate, your spacing is pretty normal. And even if your heart rate goes higher, it's still kind of spaced normal. You'll see an ECG recording that has a lot of variable heart rate in there, but a little bit. Well, I have slides for that. But that's how they track, like how AFib is tracked, is your variable heart rate. Something as simple as that, and they can do it on the ring, just on that smart ring that we were talking about earlier. Blood oxygen, we said it's tracking it even when you're sleeping, even though you don't know that. This can tell if the wearer stops breathing or if O2 is lowered. Motion while sleeping, like how much you're moving around, because it has those accelerometers in there that does the same thing as you're walking, but it can tell that while you're sleeping. It can detect early sleep apnea. Sleep apnea can lead to other problems if untreated. So does anybody in here have sleep apnea? Yeah. I have my BiPAP in my room, and I brought my water, my distilled water, all that stuff. I have sleep apnea. So one of the biggest things when you have sleep apnea is they worry about AFib, right? You're going into AFib. So AFib is atrial fibrillation. And atrial fibrillation, what happens is your heart, the top part of your heart kind of has a crazy signal on it, and the bottom part, the ventricles, are still pumping normally. It's not really a life-threatening situation, but if you stay in AFib for a while, it can lead to cardioversion. So you could have to go in and get shocked at a lower energy and sync mode and all that on a defib. Hopefully you come out of it. But the biggest danger in AFib is that your blood on the top part of your heart is not circulating normally the way it should be circulating, either to your lungs, which is pulmonary circulation, or to your body, which is systemic circulation. So what happens is it pools in your heart. You go out of AFib, hopefully eventually just on your own. That pooling blood clotted when it was sitting in your heart, not pumping. Goes to your brain. What happens when you get a blood clot in your brain? What is that called? A stroke. What is it when it goes into your lungs? Blood clot in your lungs. Pulmonary embolism. Both of those are really bad, right? So just having this monitoring, it can give you an early sign, and it can increase creating a healthier patient population through monitoring this stuff. Me, on the one hand, I'm like, I told you I'm the perfect bad example. I didn't know I had I didn't know that I had sleep apnea. I had a sleep study done. It's been over a year ago now, but then there was a recall on the BiPAP, and I couldn't get a BiPAP, and I think I did my sleep study in June or July, somewhere in there. I got my BiPAP in November, I think it was. So I've been wearing it pretty much ever since. Now I don't know if I could sleep without that stupid thing. It's like a mask on my face, and it's hard to get used to at first, but definitely has made a big difference for me. And I used to get AFib when I was wearing that Holter monitor. I got AFib a few times at night. The monitoring company that I said was monitoring that phone that I had called me. How are you feeling at 1 o'clock in the morning last? I don't know, I was sleeping. Well, you didn't notice it? I told you it's a guessing game with them back and forth to see if I had any kind of symptoms or if I was asymptomatic. So it was a guessing game back and forth. I don't know, I was sleeping, like, why are you calling me and bugging me about this, Oh, you have to talk to your doctor about that. Okay, and that unknown part is probably the worst part of all, I think. So wearable sensors, they have clothing now. It has metal woven into the yarn of the fabric. So there's one brand, this is the one I focused on, but there's a lot more I think there's more brands being developed. It's called Hexoskin. This is a name brand. It has 3-lead ECG. So I told you I can do 1 lead on my watch. This can do all 3 leads. So I can look at the whole heart. It does respiration, so the breathing, pulse ox, blood pressure, skin temperature. It has a 3-axis accelerometer. I think the ones in your watch is just 1 axis. So it can tell movement side to side, front to back, up and down. It has a lot more accuracy on the accelerometer. It's non-invasive, it's just something you wear. But you think like wearable technology, how do you have to worry about washing it, right? Because if you're doing like, a lot of these are made for sports activities and you're running or whatever, and it's gonna get sweaty and stinky and you're never gonna be able to wash it. So it's able to be washed too. And some of these have like pop-in sensors, like a little snap clip on them. And that's kind of like the Holter monitor that I wear. It was a patch. Sorry, it was a patch that went like a sticker on my chest, and I have kind of a little bit of hair on my chest. I had to shave it, which drove me crazy. But I stuck that patch on there, and then it's a little key. It looks like about the size of your key fob for your car, and it just popped in there. So I'd tear that sticker off every few days and replace it. But this has it built in, or it has clickable like pieces that pop onto the clothing. 36 plus hour battery. So that's a lot better than like my watch lasts maybe 24 hours. So this can last an extra 12 hours. Bluetooth to your phone, and then clinically validated by research labs. But from what I could tell, it wasn't FDA like 510K device yet. This is a picture of some of the stuff of that. This is called AstroSkin. It's made by this Hexoskin though. This is their product. And this is headband. This is women's version, the men's version, but it's actually like a suit that you wear, like a outside, like a tank top, I guess. So it has blood pressure, activity level. That's that 3-axis accelerometer that I was talking about. Skin temperature, breathing rate, and volume. So it could tell the volume too, how much is being breathed in. This is mostly for like high-end athletes. This thing is, I want to say it's around $500. That's about what Apple Watch is too, but this is actually, you know, like more for training, and they can wear it too for recovery levels too. That's like big in athletics. Someone that's like, I don't know, training for the Olympics or like Tour de France or high-end athletes could wear this, and it helps a lot in recovery and knowing where they're at. Has anyone heard of organic or electronics? Organic electronics? It's a new technology, and it uses carbon, and it's able to make circuits and actually use some of your body too as part of the circuit. But see how thin this is? So this is organic CMOS logic circuit. Total thickness is less than 3 micrometers, and the scale bar here is 25 millimeters. So I'm guessing this is 25 across here. How big is 25 in inches? It's about 1 inch. 1 inch is 25.4. So this whole thing, all these circuits you see here are like 1 inch across. And that circuits, we're not, as biomeds, we're not going to be repairing this. I'm sorry. I can't solder that well, like that small, but even surface mount, you know, is like a challenge. We're not going to be soldering anything on these. These are definitely like throwaway pieces. And then this is a organics-based flexible display. You can see this display on here, and it's able to be bent and moved around. This can fit in. I put this in there because I thought this is kind of maybe the future of some of the medical technology, maybe where it's going. And you can see how miniaturized these circuits can be. And remember the 1974 artificial pancreas. So this is a good example of a bad example. This is me. This is Dave Scott. Atrial fibrillation, it says up there. My heart rate's 129 beats per minute. And then it says, you know, like this disclaimer and this and that, you know, like your doctor should look at this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, heart rate variability, I talked about that earlier. You see the spacing between this R wave and this R wave right here, they're real close together. Then you look here and this one's further apart. Then you look at this one, it's kind of further. Then these two are together. This one's further apart, you know, further apart. This maybe is some noise in there, who knows. You can see the variability. Down here, you can see a big one there. It looks like I missed a couple beats there in my AFib. This is taken off my watch. And it tells down here, you can't see this probably where you're at, but it says 25 millimeters per second, 10 millimeters per millivolt. What is that? What does that compare to? That compares to our regular hospital equipment. That's what we run, right? 25 millimeters, our speed of our graphing paper and our amplitude. Same thing as what we have on like an ECG machine at work. That goes into how many, the frequency and the watch and all algorithm version, blah, 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 so on. The ECG, this waveform is similar to lead 1 ECG. For more information, see instructions for use. So from this, like, oh crap, I'm having AFib, you know. I had been to the doctor's office. I had thought I had AFib or had some kind of heart issue for a while, you know, like quite a few times. I actually had ablation procedure. I had atrial flutter originally. I went for a regular checkup at my doctor's office, and I went in, they do your blood pressure and your pulse rate and all that, and take your body weight and go in there and, Dave, your heart rate is really high. Well, I just walked from across the street and, this and that, whatever. No, it's too high for that. Well, how high is it? Heart rate. 140 beats per minute, we think, is what your heart rate is. I was just sitting in the waiting room waiting to be called back. I'm like, 140 beats per minute. I felt like maybe I was kind of like, felt like a little antsy, like I had maybe too much caffeine or something in the morning or something like that. I'm like, well, I think maybe that's what it is. I thought 140 is pretty high. Okay, well, who's your primary care doctor? Oh, they're just across the street. Okay, we're going to send you over there. Go over to the primary care doctor. They hook me up to a 10 lead. Okay, we'll come back and talk to you in just a minute. Each time, I'm like, oh man, what's going on? It's getting worse. They're not telling me. And each time they took my blood pressure at each place, it went up a little bit each time, just because I was worrying so much. Like, what's going on? Why aren't they telling me anything? So then we're going to send you from the primary care. We're going to send you back across the street again to the cardiologist. Now it's getting serious. I'm like, oh man, this is bad. Like, what's going on? Go there, and they hook me up to the 10 lead again. I've never had so many ECGs before in my life that I've had in probably this all started in 2020, like January of 2020, when I originally got diagnosed with atrial flutter. So cardiologist does, and they'll say, all right, the cardiologist will be in just a minute to talk to you. Like, well, they're not bringing the defib in here, so I guess maybe I'm going to make it. I'm okay, maybe, but it seems kind of like they're not telling me something. So they come in there, and the doctor gets out the paper, the recording, and he's looking at it, and he says, you're in atrial flutter. And he said, your ventricular rate is 140, but your atrial rate is 300. So my atrial were going like twice as fast as my ventricles. The top part of my heart was going twice as fast as the bottom part of my heart. So my bottom part of my heart was at 140. The atria top part, like 300. And he said the easiest way to do it is flip the ECG upside down. And he said it looks like a sawtooth. And he was looking at so I had way more R waves, which is kind of this part right in here before the PQRS is the R wave. I had a bunch of R waves and not as many P waves, sorry. I had more P waves and I didn't have as many QRSs. This part is the QRS. This is the P wave here at the beginning. So I had like double the P waves that I had QRS waves. So it was, and he said, when you flip it upside down, it looks like a sawtooth. Well, what can I do? Well, here's some blood thinners. Start taking these because it's the same thing happens with that, the blood pooling in those atria. And then when it pumps out, it could cause either the stroke or pulmonary embolism. So I'm like, man, this is not good. I'm like barely 50 some years old. Like I think I was 52 then, which I'm too young for that. I'm not old enough. I'm 55 now. So I guess I was maybe a little older than that because 3 years ago, yeah, 52, 51, 52, 53 maybe. Anyways, take the blood thinners. Atrial fibrillation, we can do, or atrial flutter, we can do an ablation procedure and it's like 90% effective. All right, book me in there, I'll do it. So like a week later, I had my atrial flutter ablation procedure, which they go through. They call it minimally invasive. It's not super invasive. It goes, if you bend your leg up here, there's a vein that goes right here. It's your femoral vein. It goes up into your heart. The atrial flutter is on the right-hand side of the heart. It's where the SA node is, and the SA node's like where your rhythm starts at in your heart. So they ablated these pieces that they know is common, and they can go in there with a Bloom stimulator and see where things are going and the erroneous path that my electrical activity is taking in my heart. So they can see all that, and they ablated it. Everything was good for a while, and then one day I was getting ready for work. I felt great after that. I was like, man, I'm glad they caught that. I'm still taking these blood thinners. I feel pretty good. I don't have, the only thing I noticed when I had that atrial flutter, one day I think at work, and I was going from the parking garage, and I parked in the lower level, and I went up some stairs, and I got up the stairs, and it was just one flight of stairs, and I was kind of like, well, I'm a little lightheaded, and I kind of like, I need to slow down a little bit, and I'm kind of like a little disoriented and dizzy, and I'm just going to stand here for a second and then I'll be okay. And then I was fine and I went on with my day and I didn't think anything of it. I thought, well, maybe it's because I just ate breakfast and all this blood's in my stomach and I'm not, I'm lightheaded because of that or whatever. I think I probably, looking back, I was probably in atrial flutter then. I didn't know it. That's where having this and having a watch and tracking all that would really come in handy, or having the ring. I didn't have any of that stuff at that time. So fast forward about 6-8 weeks, I was getting ready for work, and I was at that time I was wearing just a Fitbit, and my rate went to 165 beats per minute when I was walking from the living room into the bedroom to get dressed for work. And I'm like, man, 165, that's not good. I didn't have ECG recording or anything then, just the Fitbit. It just gave me a heart rate. Call the cardiologist's office. My heart rate's really high, I don't feel that great. Okay, come in and see us. Go in there, run a 10-lead ECG again. Everything looks good. I don't know what's going on. Later on, I had not feeling well again. I'm not going to work today. I'm not feeling that great. Something's going on. I'm going to go to urgent care. I told my wife. So I went to the urgent care. They ran an ECG on me again. Oh, everything looks normal. You're good. Darn it, and I had a Holter monitor in there too that I wore. So they saw that I had intermittent AFib. But when I went to the urgent care the last time, my wife, we were driving back and she said, you need to get one of those watches. And I was like, okay, there's a mall right here on the way home. We'll just stop in there. There's an Apple store there. I'm going to get one of these watches. And from that watch, this is what I figured out. So from this, never stepping foot in the doctor's office. This is my message. We have an app at the place where the hospital where I go for my cardiologist is at. And this is my message. It says you, this is from me. I'm trying to see if this works. I was trying to attach the file to this app. So I talked to you earlier today. Is this photo readout good enough for diagnosing? And then this is an attachment right here. That attachment is this. Hi, David. It works. We're able to see the rhythm strip you attached clearly. It was nice speaking to you earlier today. I placed the stress test orders in. Let me know if you do not hear from someone regarding scheduling next week. So I got a nuclear stress test. This is last July, I guess it was. Never stepping foot in the hospital. I mean, other than being at work. I did this recording on my watch, attached it to this message to my doctor, and got scheduled for a stress test because of this rhythm that I had, this ECG rhythm. So to me, that's the future of healthcare, is that kind of diagnosis in home or like away from the hospital. So it saved me a hospital visit, it saved me a visit to the cardiologist, saved me that copay that I probably would have had to see a specialist. And I had a stress test, a nuclear stress test. So one day I got injected with nuclear isotopes, and then they imaged me, and they see where all the blood's flowing in your heart, all your coronary arteries. Then the next day came back, and I couldn't have any caffeine, and I couldn't take some of my medication that I take. I take a medication called it's a beta blocker. It kind of slows my heart down. So I couldn't take any of that stuff. Come back the next day, do the stress test on the treadmill. So and I had to wear a mask this time because we were still wearing masks. And I'm on the treadmill, trying to walk on the treadmill, exercise on the treadmill, wearing this mask. And my heart rate got to the level that they wanted it. They want a target heart rate of like 70% of your max is what they go to. If anybody's worked in like stress tests, you probably shaking your head. Yep, that's right. So I got to that 70. Then they injected the nuclear medicine isotope in me. It goes throughout your heart. And I thought, well, how's it going to stay there? It actually attaches to those vessels, so they can tell if there's any blockages or anything like that. Luckily, I didn't have any blockages. So they were able to prescribe me this other medication that brings me out of the AFib really fast. If I have it, it's called Flecainate. It has something to do with the electrolyte balance in the heart. It's some kind of like sodium or potassium or some little pill that I take. I brought some with me. Luckily, I haven't had them. I haven't had any AFib since November of last year, so I'm doing pretty good. And it's just kind of random when it happens. It doesn't seem to be, I haven't figured out what causes that, but based on this, you know, like having the app on your phone for your doctor and being able to send like legitimate medical like information to the doctor and get it diagnosed with the, you know, like never stepping foot in the clinic at all. I was able to do all this. So what is the future for this wearable technology? Biosensors can measure skin conductance, heart rate, body temperature, as well as detect changes in pH, glucose, and salt in the human body. What is pH? What do we do with pH? That's for like acidosis or too high or too low. Acidosis, alkalosis, too high of blood pH can tell if your kidneys or your lungs are working right. So the pH is pretty important. Glucose, we already talked about. Salt through sweat and through tears. Tattoo-based, the thing that I had that I stuck on my chest, that Holter monitor, I kind of think of that like kind of as a almost tattoo-based because it's like a temporary tattoo type of thing, a stick-on. It's not like actually going to the tattoo shop and they get out that little and do the tattoo. It's actually a replaceable piece. That they make it look like a tattoo though. It kind of has a design on that. It's actually a medical sensor. Clothing, which we talked about, metal woven fabric, sweat, glucose monitoring that can combine pH, humidity, temperature sensors that have led to improvements in therapeutic applications in diabetes. Battery power. So with all the electric cars we have now, we don't really see it, I guess. And if you've worked in medical equipment a while, you know, like the evolution of batteries in medical equipment, how we had those crappy NiCad batteries back in the day. And now then they evolved into like nickel metal hydride. Then now they're lithium ion based battery, and they're, you know, so much better. They run so much longer. They actually have like smarter batteries now that have like battery management systems in them. One of my friends at the gym I go to, her son works for a company that he's a chemical engineer. He's a PhD chemical engineer, their son. And I was like, what does he do for his job? You know, because I don't really know what chemical engineers do or PhD level. He works for a company in the Bay Area, and they're developing the next battery technology. And where I live in Colorado, we have this place called Solid Power, and they're in Louisville, Colorado. It's a bunch of engineers from CU Boulder, and they're developing a solid battery. It has no like wet chemicals in it. It's solid. Half the size of a lithium ion battery and the same power. Or you can do the same size and double the power. So it's going to change. I think it's going to change the way that we do that. And I talked about that organic electronics earlier. Organic or electronics on a wearable piece of a device. You have a solar cell built into your piece of whatever clothing that you're wearing. I think that's kind of maybe the future of some of this stuff. More sensors are in development, cancer detection, early detection of other health issues. So there's actually a bra in development that can sense breast cancer. Amazingly enough, I mean, these sensors are going to change. So I think what's going to happen in the future is we're only going to have higher acute care patients in the hospital, people that really need to be there, rather than someone just hanging out so they can observe them or whatever, because you're going to be able to be observed on monitoring at home. So more sensors could lead to more and better technology. That's that curve that I was talking about before. More and better connectivity. We just got everyone's on 5G now, and now I see that they have 10G. I think it was Verizon says their internet is 10G. So more and more Wi-Fi communications, more miniaturization. We looked at that organic electronics. What about AI? AI is like a big thing now, right? Has anybody looked at Chat GPT? Has anybody checked that out? It's pretty crazy. It's like you can ask it questions and it answers you. Yeah, I teach a class at night with another guy, and we were looking at it together like over Zoom. And he's like, Dave, check this out. Write a 500-word report on, you know, anatomy and physiology in the human body. You know, ChatGPT starts writing. He said students don't even have to write anything anymore. They can just go into ChatGPT and put it all in there. But AI, so I guess I skipped this one, more data. if you're able to do those 5 vital signs and it's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year that you're being monitored, that creates like just a huge amount of data overload. Is any doctor going to be, how many people does it take to look at all of that data? Guess what? AI interpretation. It can look at all that data. Computers work no problem 24 hours, 365 days a year, and they work a lot faster than we do. So let's say like certain vital signs are within a certain range, that sets off a trigger, notifies the doctor is able to see that data and notify the patient. So it's going to create a healthier patient population and hopefully create less hospitalizations. Only the really acute patients will be in the hospital. So conclusions, I think maybe there's a need for secure data transmissions and medical equipment, or for Wi-Fi, earlier detection, possible better outcomes. I'm lucky that my atrial flutter got diagnosed when it did, and I didn't have a blood clot or anything like that, because I just lucked out by just dumb luck, I guess. But if I would have been monitoring it, it probably would have told me long before that. It would have told me that I have heart rate variability long before that. There's actually if you go into your health on your setting on your watch, there's a part in there that you can look at your heart rate variability, and it gives you reports in there. And it also has an AFib alert part in there too. I didn't put any of that in this presentation, but healthier patient population, which I already talked about, more and better healthcare at home, which if you are here later today, I know Rick was in here earlier, Carol Davis-Smith, who was sitting over here. Rick, Carol, and I, and Rafia, she's from MD Anderson here. We're gonna be on a panel discussion about healthcare at home. So that's kind of like a part 2 to this wearables technology. So we think, healthcare at home is gonna increase. Hospitals will have higher acuity patients, what I already said. Doctors or AI doctors. So have you ever heard of the Watson computer? It was the one that was on Jeopardy that beat all the Jeopardy champions or whatever. It was the Watson computer. Watson computer has been working in healthcare for quite a while now, helping doctors to diagnose different things on patients, but they have to manually put in all the data and put in everything. If you have Wi-Fi and it's putting the data in there and it's already reading it, it's only going to be better for all of us, I think. Don't even get me started like on nanotechnology, because to me, that's like the next level of the next level. Because, studying all this, I kind of learned more about that. But BMETs will be involved with this technology and the advancements, I believe. And, maybe our job will change from like looking at the patient monitor as much to like looking at the interface between the home and the patient, and maybe, like helping to problem solve patients, at home if they're having interference on their ECG or having interference on their pulse ox or something like that. These are references that I had for this article, and I think I've given them this presentation. These are all clickable. A lot of these are Wikipedia, but you see the Hexoskin. This one at the bottom, this Reshaping Healthcare with Wearable Biosensors. This is a really cool article, nature.com.